Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser, and we are here. The final week, literally the final day, where the Seahawks will make their final decisions for who makes this roster, who is part of the 53, and then by Wednesday, we'll find out who is on the practice squad. And so for today, I'm going to walk you through my final 53 projections. I haven't done this ahead of time, so I'll also go through some practice squad items that I have some projections on or some thoughts on. We'll go through that together. And just to set the stage for the week, and so folks that are just kind of getting acclimated. So tomorrow, Tuesday, is when the Seahawks will cut down the roster. Now, you can see teams already starting to let some players go. If you know that they're not on the roster for sure, you don't think there's any trade potential, you can start letting guys go. You don't have to wait until tomorrow to do it. It's kind of a kind thing to do because it gives them an extra bit of time to see if they can catch on with another team. So we may start seeing some announcements about the Seahawks as soon as today. And then Wednesday is when practice squads are set. So there will be kind of a 24-hour gap. We will hear back from some guys, pretty much immediately tomorrow. I still don't have my schedule nailed down because the Seahawks have not yet nailed down their schedule for the week. So my plan is to kind of live broadcast through the announcements, or at least as we're getting the information. I think if I remember correctly, last year, we were able to go and see the beginning of practice where guys were warming up. And so that was my first chance to kind of see who was still in a uniform and who was not. So don't know how that's going to go, but obviously subscribe, follow along, click the bell to get notified. That's the best way to stay in touch. Wednesday, as I said, will be the day they set the practice squad. Wednesday night is the Real Hawk Talk season prediction show. So if you haven't seen that before, you're going to want to tune in for that. That'll be 6:00. We'll have the whole crew from Josh Cashman to Braden to Derek to Nathan to Dana to Evan to Jeff. Like, everybody will be there. We'll go through our predictions. Thursday, my tentative plan right now, I'm going to do pretty much a day-long season preview. I have some big ideas. We'll see if any of them come to fruition, but keep an eye out. I might do a marathon season preview, try to bring in a bunch of guests to talk through their view of the Seahawks around the NFC West, maybe talking to some of the teams that are on the Seahawks schedule. We'll see. I don't know how it'll play out, but should be a fun chance to hang out together. All right. So before I get into the final 53, last quick thing here is we are about 500 followers away on Instagram from hitting the 10,000 mark. If we do that before the season, I will be giving away tickets to Seahawks versus 49ers week 1. If we get to 25,000 subscribers here on YouTube, I'll give away another set of tickets. So take a second, follow us on Instagram at Hawk Blogger. That would be awesome. All right. So before I get into projecting this year's 53, I thought it would be worthwhile to at least share how did I do last year, because, nobody's perfect. Let's take a look at what I did a year ago at this time. Now, this is, again, if you're just coming in just to be confused, this is last year's 53. These are the actual players in green that made the 53-man cut. The guys in blue are guys that did not. All right. So you will see here my projections, as you guys have kind of gotten used to, are top to bottom. So anytime that you see just a block of green like this, that means I got it right. This block of green here of 6 receivers, I got right. The 4 tight ends, I got right. Then offensive line is where things went haywire. So you can see there's these gaps where I thought McClendon Curtis was going to make it. He did not. I thought Raekwon O'Neal was going to make it. He did not. I thought I did not think Satawa Lamea or Jalen Sundell would make it. They did. And so as we count through here, there's 3, 6, 9. So basically I was wrong on McClendon Curtis, wrong on Raekwon O'Neal, and instead Satawa Lamea and Jalen Sundell were kind of surprises to me. So those were, I think Sundell was probably the biggest surprise to me. So Satawa Lamea, I was starting to see the coaches get enamored with. But Sundell was undrafted free agent, kind of out of nowhere, and did not see that coming. Defensive line, I got that all correct. And then inside linebacker, I got 3 out of the 4 correct, but was wrong on Drake Thomas. Interestingly, I actually I have text proof. I was texting my friends about my Real Hawk Talk friends about Drake Thomas. He had come back late last year from injury, missed most of camp, and I was kind of enamored with him when he came back. I was like, man, this guy looks different than the rest of these guys. He's a really interesting like linebacker body type, and I just didn't think he had enough reps to make it with a new coach who hadn't really had any previous experience with him, but he did. So I was wrong on that one. I was right on the outside linebacker edge guys, Nwosu, Mafe, Hall, Draymond Jones. They made a trade for Trevis Gibson. So I didn't predict that, was wrong on that, so to speak, I guess. And then cornerback, I got all of that right, except I think Artie Burns might have been injured, if I remember right. And so Nehemiah Pritchett and D. Williams made it. So for the most part, I think I was pretty on target last year. The misses, I think, really were offensive line, and those were surprises, genuinely. The Drake Thomas one was not a shock in terms of I thought he was an interesting player, but was not who I projected. So I think all in all, a decent track record. And when I look at, I'm going to go look back at the Seahawks transactions in 2024 at this time. And as I scroll back to August, so yeah, it was the day of like cuts that they traded for Trevis Gibson. So couldn't have projected that. They had traded away Darrell Taylor a few days earlier. Remember, they traded away Darrell Taylor. They played their final preseason game. Uchenna Nwosu got hurt. So that was an unfortunate end to that preseason. They'd also recently traded away Michael Jackson, the cornerback, to Carolina, and acquired Michael Barrett from Carolina. That was part of why I picked Michael Barrett to make the squad. I thought that was a pretty decent sign. He had previous experience with Mike McDonald at Michigan. That turned out to not be true. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of other moves going along. The Seahawks had traded Nick Harris a few weeks prior to the Browns, the center, after they signed Connor Williams. Was pretty quiet. So the question will be, we've been seeing some trades go through. The question will be whether the Seahawks have any new players that are not currently on the roster that end up making it like they did last year. Although the Trevis Gibson thing was really, that was not part of the plan. That just happened once Uchenna Nwosu got hurt. So let's go and check out my projections for this season. All right. Let me switch over and I'll start sharing this. So you guys are pretty familiar with this at this point. We've got different coloring for this than the last one, but green means they see them as a lock to make it. blue is high confidence, yellow is on the bubble. And the way to read these things again is top to bottom. So at the bottom here, I say the projected keep that they're going to keep 3 guys here. That means all 3 of these players will make the roster, even though there's different colors. That's just, I don't know why I have Drew Lock as blue. He should be green at this point, but in any event, it doesn't really matter. Have him making the roster. All right. I also have an IR list below. And so when we get to running backs, you can see like Kenny McIntosh is down there in IR. That'll come up in a little bit when I talk about some of these other position groups. For running back, I still have them keeping 4. I still have it the same 4: Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, Robbie Oots, and George Halani. I don't have Damian Martinez making it. I don't have Jacardier Wright making it. I think both guys could be potential practice squad guys. Wide receiver, I'm sticking with what I've had before. I'm not changing this at this point. I do acknowledge Derek Young and Jake Bobo have some overlap, but I think they play different roles, and I think they bring different things, and I think they're both really good special teams players. So I have them both making the squad. And I have Steven Sims and Marquez Valdez-Scantling not making the squad. So these are your 5: Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp, Torrey Horton, Derek Young, Jake Bobo. I am not worried about Torrey Horton's ankle. I just think they're being cautious, and there's no reason that he needs to push it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is back this week or, by the time they get to game week. So I think he is fine. And yes, we could change. I didn't really go back and change the colors, to be honest. I mostly just focused on who was going to make the cut, and I have those guys all making the cut. All right. We get to tight end. Also, no changes here. AJ Barner, Elijah Arroyo, Eric Saubert, and Brady Russell all making the squad. I think Nick Callaway, we'll come back and do practice squad as a second pass through. Okay. So I'll do that with you guys after we get through the initial roster. But now let's get to offensive line. Some change here. I am projecting a lot of the same guys I had before. So first of all, I have them keeping 9 offensive linemen, which is 2 fewer than they kept last year. But Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, Gray Zabel, Jalen Sundell, Anthony Bradford, who I think are your starters. Then Olu Oluwatimi and Josh Jones. Josh Jones is your swing tackle. Then Mike Jarrell. And I've got Dalton Reisner as a projected veteran addition to be your guard backup. And the way that this works out, that means that Mason Richmond, Bryce Cable-Deuce, Otavo Lamea would not make the final roster. I think what Reisner does for you is give you a legitimate backup guard. And your other option for backup guard is you could have Jalen Sundell move out to a guard spot if need to, and Olu Oluwatimi could slide in at center. I don't think Olu is really a guard prospect, but that's where I have those guys going. You might be asking, well, where's Christian Haynes on this list? I have Christian Haynes going on the IR. This is not a report. I don't have inside information. I'm reading the tea leaves, and I believe that, Mike McDonald talked about a pec injury earlier in camp for Christian Haynes. He seemed to re-injure it during the joint practice with the Packers. And I don't know if they find a trade partner, great, but if he's injured, they won't have one, and they may just stash him away on IR for the year. Now, they could designate him to return. That's a possibility as well. But that's my guess, is that they are going to say, for them to keep him on the roster when he has not played that well and he is now injured, I don't see that as making a lot of sense. I have Mason Richmond above him anyway, even if he was healthy enough. I think Mason Richmond gives the team a little bit more than Christian Haynes, since he can back up at guard. He's played some tackle. He's played center. I think that's just a valuable guy. So if Reisner's not signed, then I think Richmond makes it. But as of recently, Reisner had not made his visit because the Seahawks weren't in Seattle to be visited. They were in Green Bay. So now they're back. I would guess that they are going to have their visit with him today. And then we'll see if they make a decision at the end of that. So that's a meaningful change in terms of projections. I think that the nice thing here is it gives you two backup tackles, Josh Jones, who's a swing tackle, Mike Jarrell, who's also played both tackle spots. Jarrell did not have a good final game against the Packers, but he still, I think, is a guy that you keep around as another backup tackle. And then you'd have Reisner as your backup guard. And as I said, Olu Oluwatimi could slip in at center if you need to, and Jalen Sundell could move out to guard if you needed to. So that's the offensive line spot. Interior defensive line, a few changes. I've moved Brandon Peely up. So Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, and Brandon Peely, your top four. I have them keeping 6. And this one I kind of stared at a little bit. I'll talk to you through the other position groups and how I got to this. But Brandon Peely did not play in the final game against the Packers. Quentin Bohanna did. So I think that pretty clearly puts Peely above Bohanna in that race. And even so, I have Mike Morris was hurt in the Packers practice. I don't know how seriously. So there's a little bit of a question mark there, but I still have him making it. I also have Quentin Bohanna making it, but J.R. Singleton had a fantastic football game on Saturday. I know Justin Hines is a big fan of Singleton and Bubba Thomas. I think Singleton's been really good throughout. He could be the Jalen Sundell of this year. The undrafted guy who played well throughout, but nobody really assumed he was going to jump up above somebody else. I don't think it's crazy that J.R. Singleton could jump above Mike Morris. I think that's possible. If you were to ask me, like, who could be a surprise cut for the Seahawks, Mike Morris could be that guy. Now, I think Mike Morris, very valuable on special teams. He's a flexible player, can play different spots. J.R. Singleton's just a guy that I think they're pretty high on in terms of what he's really stout against the run. He can play inside or outside, can play nose. He brings a lot. So there's a chance that I've got this order wrong. This is the one I'm least comfortable with because I think Singleton could be that guy who jump up, So we will see how that turns out. I don't have Bubba Thomas or Anthony Campbell making it. All right. And I still have them keeping 6. I have Jonathan Hankins on IR and Riley Mills on PUP to start the year. All right. Inside, off-ball linebacker, I've got Ernest Jones, Tyrese Knight, Patty O'Connell. I still have Josh Ross above Drake Thomas. It doesn't really matter since I'm saying they're keeping 5. There's a lot of folks that have them projected to keep 4. They did last year keep 4. Now, part of the reason that I am projecting 5 is that part of the reason I'm projecting 5 is that these guys are really valuable special teams guys, and I think that they will probably get reps there more so than some of the other positions where last year they might have kept a few more. This could be off. It could also easily be Drake Thomas over Josh Ross. I think Josh Ross is a more valuable special teams player than any of these other guys. I think he's one of the best special teams players on the roster. And so even though he's got a cast on his hand right now, he has been practicing. I think he's going to be ready to play. I think that they keep him. Now, we'll see. This one's a tough one. back into that room. It's also possible that they bring in somebody from the outside, but so far, Mike Macdonald has not brought in a drafted player at this position, has not brought in a free agent at this position. Alfonso Tupatala has played really well since he's got here, but I don't think it's going to be enough to make the roster. So this is one where I'm kind of going differently than a different way than the chalk. But yeah, I've got those 5 guys making the final roster: Ernest Jones, Tyrese Knight, Patty O'Connell, Josh Ross, Drake Thomas. We get to edge. Edge, I still have them keeping 5. And Derek Hall, DeMarcus Lawrence, Boye Mafe, Chenanwosu. And then I've got him keeping Jared Ivey. I don't think that they can get Jared Ivey to practice squad. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think he's got too big of a name, and I think he's played too well for that to be possible. I also think he gives you a lot of what DeMarcus Lawrence does in some ways, or Uchenna Nwosu as kind of a really heavy edge setter. So with Uchenna Nwosu likely not ready to start the year, he could come in there and help out. It's possible Tyreek Smith is above him, but he has not been a better player than Jared Ivey. It just would be a positional, like maybe they have a different role for Tyreek Smith because they're very different players. But Ivey's been the better player, the more valuable player in my mind. So that's why I've got him above. I will say now I've got Jalen Gaines here. That should probably drop down into, IR or whatever. He'll be let go. Seth Coleman had a really nice game. I think he had 5 pressures against the Packers. We'll talk about that when we get to practice squad, but I don't have him making the final roster. Cornerback, keeping 5 there as well. Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, Josh Jobe, Shaquille Griffin, and Nehemiah Pritchett. I think Demarion Williams had a really nice game this weekend. He's also a good special teams player. I just think Pritchett's had a better camp overall. Young guy that they're invested in. So that's where I've got it. Shamar Jean-Charles has come back, and he was leading this position group before he got hurt. I'm just not sure he's going to have enough time to make it. So that's the corner room. And then safety, similarly, I've still got them keeping 4. Julian Love, Kobe Bryant, Nicky Minwari, DeAnthony Bell. Even though Ty Okada had an amazing game, amazing interception, Jarek Reed has been one of the highest graded PFF guys on the team in terms of preseason performance. I think DeAnthony Bell not only is a great special teams guy, but I think is their 3rd safety at this point, knowing that Nicky Minwari is kind of playing a safety / nickel role. It's possible that they go to 5 safeties. And if they went to 5 safeties, it really could be either Ty Okada or Jarek Reed. I think Jarek Reed's a slightly better special teams player. They've been able to stash Ty Okada on the practice squad the last few years. So unless somebody just, snags him, I think he'll be there. One of the interesting things to watch is Pete Carroll's back in the NFL. He's got familiarity with a number of these players. Guys like Ty Okada, Jarek Reed, if they're let go, it's possible Pete Carroll would swoop in and grab one of these guys that he has familiarity with. So maybe a little harder to sneak guys onto practice squad than you did in the past, but that's where that goes. And, I think DeAnthony Bell is just he's been one of the best players in camp throughout. He's made a ton of plays. He's made plays in the secondary as in coverage. He's made plays as a run defender. He's made plays as a blitzer. So for my money, he's had a better camp than any of these other guys that he's battling with. But I know for fans, Ty Okada makes that big diving interception, and they're familiar with Ty Okada, so he's probably a little above there. For some fans, not for me though. And then Michael Dixon, Jason Myers. I have Chris Stoll making it. I know that they've got another long snapper, but I assume Chris Stoll is going to be fine by then. And so, just getting back to it, last year's team kept 26 on offense, 24 on defense. Where I differ from last year is so they kept 6 defensive linemen. I'm keeping 6. They kept 4 inside linebackers. I'm keeping 5. So that's one difference. They kept 5 outside linebackers edge. I'm keeping 5. They kept 5 corners. I'm keeping 5. And they kept 4 safeties. I'm keeping 4. So I'm keeping 1 more inside linebacker than they did last year. I am keeping 2 fewer offensive linemen. They kept 11 last year. I'm keeping 9. And then they're keeping one fewer receiver. I have them at 5 receivers instead of 6. And obviously 1 extra quarterback, so 3 instead of 2, and 4 running backs instead of 3. So when you look at this and you say, well, I see some people having them keep 5 backs. I mean, they kept 3 backs last year. That was without needing a fullback. I'm adding a 4th, so they keep a fullback. You're also adding a 3rd quarterback, so you have to get somebody from somewhere. It's got to be 5 wide receivers, and it's got to be fewer offensive linemen. Whether they go to 9 or 10, I don't know. But this would be a 25-25 balance between offense and defense if this is how they went. So that's kind of where I'm at. I feel pretty good about that, but we'll find out in the next 24 hours. So let's go back and let's do a little practice squad. All right. I have not done this yet. And so we'll do this together. I'm going to zoom out because I need to see what I'm doing, and I'm going to get out of full screen. We will add practice squad. Well, wait, hold on. We'll add practice squad as a new color. We'll do this together. All right. I know some people just like it when I have everything done ahead of time, so there's no pausing or hemming and hawing. But you know what? We'll just do it together. Hopefully you guys are all right with that. All right. So how many players do you get on the practice squad? Well, that's changed over the years. It's now 16 players. So 10 players must be rookies or players with no more than 2 accrued seasons. Okay, so 10 of the 16 need to be rookies or no more than 2 accrued seasons. 6 players can be veterans with no limitations on how much experience they have. International players can take part in this, and you can expand to 17. So Federico Merenges is your international guy. Assume he's on the practice squad, and you're going to be up to 17. So we're going to pick 16 other players, 10 of which must be rookies or no more than 2 accrued seasons. I'm not going to go through and do all the searching to make sure about accrued seasons. I'll do my best to kind of guesstimate, but let's go ahead and do this. So practice squad. I think I'm going to go ahead and make Damian Martinez. Is that the right color? I think that's the right color. Damian Martinez, the first practice squad guy. He's also a rookie. So that's one of your 10. I think that we are going to make Steven Sims, Cody White. This one's an interesting one. I could see Tyron Broden and Ricky White all being part of practice squad consideration. I'm going to go ahead and start with those 2 and come back to that because honestly, I feel like Tyron Broden is a really interesting one, although he doesn't have any real special teams value yet. Ricky White does. That one's a tough one. It'll be tough to see those guys go, but those are considerations. So that's 3. And 2 of those guys are rookies. Steven Sims is not. I have Nick Callerup absolutely making the practice squad. Has had a really nice preseason and a guy that they can develop as a blocker and a future tight end for them. He's their future Eric Saubert. I have Mason Richmond, Bryce Cabledew, And I'm going to go with, do they have, it's either Amari Kite or Satawa Lamea. I'm going to go ahead and predict these three. I think they're going to keep extra on the offensive line. So that gets us up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rookies. And I don't know that Cody White has enough accrued seasons. So he might be still less than 2 accrued seasons. Depends on, I think he's been on the practice squad most of the time. So I'll double check that. But anyway, total number, we've got 3, 6, 7 so far, plus Merenges, but we're not going to count them. We're getting up to 16 other guys. Then I think, let's say that J.R. Singleton does not make it. He's certainly a guy that they would put on the squad if they can get him back there. I think Bubba Thomas is on that list as well. That one's a little bit questionable, so I might come back to that one. I've got Jamie Sheriff making that group. And I've got Connor O'Toole. Interesting one here. Do you go Tyreek Smith or do you go Seth Coleman? Right now, I think Seth Coleman's the guy that they really are interested in, but let's go ahead. They did cut him already once. So let's go here. What does that get us up to? That's 4, 7, 9, 12. 4 more spots on the practice squad. All right, next. So let's go to safety first. I think both of these guys, Jarek Reed and Ty Okada, would ideally be guys you could bring on your practice squad. So I think 2, 7, 9, 12, 16. Is that it? Did I do it already? Okay, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, 12, 14. Yeah, okay, 14. So we got 2 more spots. I think I would think these would be the 2 guys you do it to, although Isis Waxter is certainly in consideration. So let's take a look at what this would look like as your practice squad. 9, 12, 16. All right, so you have to have 10 that are rookies at least. Damian Martinez, Nick Callerup, 2, 3, 4 with Richmond and Cable Do, 5 with Kite, 6, 7 with Singleton and Thomas. Sheriff has less than 2 years accrued. 8, 9 with Connor O'Toole, 10 with Jarek Reed. So this would work with 10 guys who have 2 years or less of accrued time. I think Jarek Reed let me double check on him. It might not work with him, but I think it would because of the time he's missed, the seasons he's missed due to injury. The other guys that are in consideration for this, obviously Jacardier Wright, Tyrone Broden, Ricky White. Marshall Lang's not a crazy possibility, but I think Callerup's a more interesting player. Satawa Lamea, certainly. I think Seth Coleman's at least in the conversation, and Waxter. Those are the guys that I didn't highlight that could be in the mix. But those are the names that for me jump out as most likely. And if Damian Martinez gets claimed by somebody, then Jacardier Wright would be an obvious fill-in. I think the receiver one is the one I'm having the most trouble with, to be honest, because Broden's had a good camp and is absolutely the kind of prospect you want to keep working with. 6'6", 4.37 speed, has kind of bonded with Jalen Milroe. I think he's a guy you'd like to continue to develop, and you don't have any other body types like that. He's a little ways away. And Ricky White's had a fine camp and is a good special teams guy. So he's also a tough one to not have on the practice squad. I just think right now with Steven Sims, he's a guy that can be your returner. You can have that happen. If they don't keep Sims, it'd be really interesting. The next most likely guy would probably be Broden, but I don't know. That one's a tough call. Satawa Lamea, I really like Satawa Lamea. He just seems like he's not fitting what they're trying to do in this offensive line room. So, just maybe just not the right scheme for him, unfortunately. And then defensive line, this one, if Mike Morris does get cut, he could be one of the guys on this list. J.R. Singleton, I think, is really right on the bubble, and Bubba Thomas. So, I feel pretty good about this practice squad projection. I think that's about right. And as we said before, Kenny McIntosh on the IR. I have Jonathan Hankins there. AJ Finley's there. Riley Mills on the PUP. I've got Christian Haynes going on IR. Again, not a report, just my projection based off of reading tea leaves. So what do you guys think? How does that match up with your expectations? What works, what doesn't for you? And I'll look back at some of these questions. Let's go here. Does someone not swoop Damian Martinez off practice squad? Maybe. I think that's part of the calculus to figure it out, but he hasn't played well enough to where you feel we can't risk losing him. George Halani has clearly beat him out. Jacardier Wright has arguably had a better preseason and maybe even camp than Damian Martinez. And so if you lose Damian Martinez to another team, I think the Seahawks probably feel okay about that. I wouldn't love it because I really like Damian Martinez as a player, but I think that's just, you got to go according to what you've seen. Smigmol says, Cody White's our new punt returner. I know he did well in this game. I heard the commentary, like, this is how you make the cut, by really just balling out in this game. And I'm like, actually, that's just not true. I don't think the final game has almost any bearing on who makes the final roster. It can be at the edges, but if you're playing in the final game, period, you're at risk. So you're already at the back end. And if you need some heroic last game to save your chances, most likely you haven't played well enough for the coaches to feel like they can trust your performance against how you're going to play when it counts. So I thought Cody White played really well. I really like Cody White. Practices hard, tough guy, plays special teams well. Jake Bobo or Derek Young, and he had a real opportunity in this camp, and I don't think, for the most part through camp, I don't think that that's been captured, and he's been consistently with like the third string. So I don't see it. Is it possible? Sure, but I don't see it. Another question. Why so high on Derek Young when it looks like he only had one target, no catches this offseason? I don't know what you mean by one target and 6 catches this offseason. Derek Young has been maybe the most productive preseason receiver. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at that. But if you go through the Seahawks 3 games, let's start with their game against the Raiders. Derek Young had 1 catch for 31 yards. Their game against the Chiefs, he had he was the leading receiver. He had 3 catches for 52 yards. And then against the Packers, I don't think he did much against the Packers, partially because I think he didn't play many snaps. Derek Young had 1 target, no catch. But if you look at his snap count in that game, I bet it's less than 10. No, I'm wrong. He had 23 snaps, so he did have a fair number of snaps in that game. In any event, he's been very productive in the preseason before that game, and he's been on fire in practice for a couple of weeks now, making a ton of plays down the field, contested catches, just looking like he's come into himself as a receiver. So he also has been one of their really tried and true special teams players for years. And he's a guy that in college ran with the ball in his hands quite a bit out of the receiver spot as kind of a running back almost. So he just brings a lot of things to the table that makes him appealing to a coaching staff that I think wants to reward guys that have really, showed off through camp. And he's certainly one of those guys. So yeah, I think he's done a ton, certainly done a lot more than Cody White, to be honest. I think there's some recency bias going on there with Cody White in this last game. And I think also you really, really have to adjust for level of competition. And the third preseason game, by the time Cody White was making plays, that was the tail end of both rosters in there. So, yeah. Sorry, checking a text coming in here. All right. Let's see. I'm looking through other questions in chat here. I think we've got through most of them. This is a question. Could we have a look at what Mills coming back will do to the roster? Well, it's hard to project because when Riley Mills comes back, first of all, we don't know. We don't have a time frame. So figure if he's on PUP, it's at least 4 games. Could be 6. Could be more. And then you don't know who's going to be healthy at that point. Generally speaking, I think of Riley Mills challenging Mike Morris's roster spot. Mike Morris might not make it depending on what they decide to do. Like, I could absolutely see them deciding J.R. Singleton is going to bump Mike Morris. I just don't know if J.R. Singleton has the special teams value that Mike Morris does. So, yeah, I mean, Riley Mills up and around. I see him jogging around. Like, I expect him to be available this year, but it probably won't be till maybe the second half of the season. And who knows who's on the roster at that point? Who knows what the injury situations are? So we'll have to see when that happens. Got a question here from Son of Nels says, do you think Connor O'Toole clears waivers? I do. He has not had some kind of extraordinary preseason where, my God, how are you going to manage to sneak him through? I thought he's played well, but I mean, I'm going to look at edge players preseason, and interestingly, Jordan Birch for Arizona has had quite the preseason. A guy that I had on their potential ascending players list. Connor O'Toole finished with a 74.9 grade, had 9 pressures, an 82 pass rush grade, which is nice. As far as pass rush grades go, he had the 17th highest pass rush grade according to PFF. Granted, this is not how anyone makes roster decisions, but just to give you some idea. Yeah, I think, I mean, he wasn't drafted, and I don't think he was so good. Like Jamie Sheriff had a much more impressive preseason last year. He ended up eventually getting signed off of the Seahawks practice squad by Carolina for like a cup of coffee, and then he came back. Maybe, but I just don't see it with Connor O'Toole. All right. Justin saying, did I miss the roster projections? Yes, you did, Justin. You can rewind though and rewatch. So it's right there for you. Yeah, that's kind of where I have things going. And I think one of the places, I'm going to pull up a couple things real quick to make sure I've got the right things. It looks like The Athletic has projected the Seahawks to win 8 games. And we'll see. Season predictions are coming. I will tell you the betting markets right now, because I like to check this just to see if there's any change on that front. But last I had looked, betting markets were very low on the Seahawks as well. NFC West winner hasn't changed much. 49ers, 37% chance. Rams, 30% chance. Arizona, 20%. Seattle, 17%. So I'm kind of curious if they've got the first game week 1. Oh, that's preseason. They don't have it yet. All right. Well, whatever. Last time I checked, if I look at the Vegas lines, I can check to see what's going on with the game against the 49ers. And let's see. NFL odds. First week of the season. We've got the Seahawks as home underdogs still. 1.5 points. It's as high as 2.5 point underdogs to the 49ers right now. Okay. Some interesting perspectives, jumping around about Juwan Jennings for the 49ers. Maybe their best receiver, who has been nursing a calf injury that we think is a calf injury, but might be a have not given me a new contract injury. And there are some folks that are saying that Kyle Shanahan said that Juwan Jennings will be ready to play week 1 from a health perspective, and they're taking that to mean he'll play. Well, I don't think that's necessarily true. And Tim Kawakami, he reported that basically don't be surprised if Juwan Jennings is not on the Seahawks or not on the 49ers, and that they put him on IR. The quote is, there's growing frustration on both sides as Juwan Jennings continues to miss practice with a calf injury, and 49ers management continues to show little interest in restructuring his contract and giving him a big pay raise for the second time in a little over a year. This is a pretty big storyline. Juwan Jennings is a huge security blanket for Brock Purdy. He's one of their best blockers at the receiver spot, really helps in the run game. And if they can't figure this out, and if they decide to play hardball, that receiver room is going to be really, really thin. So that's one just to kind of continue watching. As I said before, if you haven't already followed us on Instagram at HawkBlogger, make sure you go there. We are charging towards 10,000 followers there. I think right now we are at 9,496. So we need 504 of you to go ahead and follow on Instagram, and then I can give away tickets so you can watch the Seahawks beat the 49ers in week 1 at home. All right. That, I think, will do it for this episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'll be back with you tomorrow. And if there's some more news that jumps out, obviously I will cover it here. Make sure you got the bell to get notified when I go live. If some trade happens, if some surprise change, I'll come back on. We'll talk about it. Until then, have a great rest of your Monday. I'm Brian Emhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.